Scientists from NASA Ames Research Center have teamed with Robert Mondavi Winery and several universities to study a problem that may cost many of the finest wine-growing regions in California over $1 billion. It could destroy half of their crops. A tiny root parasite called Phylloxera has devastated popular varieties of grapes in the Napa Valley, causing a serious decline in fruit production. The insects feed on healthy plant roots, exposing them to disease and stress. Ultimately, the plants wither and die. For most farmers, early detection is nearly impossible because by the time that visual symptoms appear, the vines are severely affected and will die in 1 to 3 years. Using airborne scanners and sophisticated remote sensing techniques, NASA is developing new ways to spot the problem before crops decline. Growers can then anticipate the need to replant with Phylloxera-resistant rootstocks. Phil Freeze manages the project for Robert Mondavi Vineyards.
Remote sensing allows the detection of stress before we can ever see it with the naked eye. And that gives us a glimpse into the future so that we can do a better job of planning for the eventuality of the loss of those vines.
This is the Napa Valley, home to America's most prestigious wine growers. Vintners here produce the fine Chardonnays, Pinot Noirs, and Cabernet Sauvignons that have helped put the California wine industry on the international map. But lurking beneath the surface of these green fields are tiny parasites called Phylloxera that threaten the very roots of a $6 billion industry. Entomologist Jeff Granette.
The place where it's feeding is a wounded area, and fungus or bacteria can get into that and cause an infection, which will eventually kill that portion of the root.
Infrared aerial photography taken over a 5-year period reveals Phylloxera's devastating effects. Dead areas show up gray. Imagery like this helps farmers see current damage, but it doesn't provide enough information for future planning. Growers need better tools.
So there's where comes NASA, because the very sophisticated technology, remote sensing, allows the detection of stress before we can ever see it with the naked eye. And that gives us a glimpse into the future so that we can do a better job of planning for the eventuality of the loss of those vines.
Phil Freeze manages the Phylloxera project for Robert Mondavi Winery.
Bob Mondavi has always thought to the future. In this case, we looked up into the sky. We looked for the technology. We looked beyond the horizon.
They looked to space. NASA scientists at nearby Ames Research Center have been developing remote sensing technology to study the Earth's surface using aircraft and satellites.
For the last 10 years, NASA has been trying to get remote sensing into more commercial uses, to develop more industry partnerships.
NASA's Joan Salute heads the GRAPES project. Her team includes participants from Ames, Mondavi Winery, and California's Davis and Chico universities.
We called up about 4 wineries last fall and met with about 4 different groups and explained to them what we wanted to try to do. And Mondavi was the one who said, "We're your guys. We want to do that same thing." This is where all the Phylloxera is. 1, 2, and 3 have visual signs, and it's in the ground. 4, 5, and 6 have no visual signs on the leaves, but it is in the ground. And 7, 8, and 9 are totally healthy, and there's nothing in the ground.
An 11-acre test site is blocked into sections with healthy, moderate, and severely infested vines. Handheld instruments are used to measure chlorophyll levels, which are a barometer of the plant's health.
Right now, if you look at a leaf from any of those 3 categories, they look the same to our eyes. But we're going to take them back into the lab at Ames and do spectral analysis and also chemical analysis to see how those leaves differ.
The second sample for blood 6. Okay.
Field and laboratory data provides a baseline for each level of infestation. Scientists estimate chlorophyll levels and use an airborne scanner to gather information on thousands of plants. Like infrared photos, the resulting images indicate where the vines are dying. But the images can also warn growers of where the bugs are just beginning their attack.
But the Phylloxera pattern seems to be going kind of in a north-south direction. The resolution is so much better. The contrast, the ability to see the areas that are already affected by Phylloxera just jump out at you even more so.
Monitoring infestation is one thing, but doing something about it is another.
We don't have any chemical agents that will cure our problem and prevent Phylloxera in Napa Valley.
Fortunately, nurseries are growing roots which are resistant to Phylloxera. Many of the popular grape plants like Chardonnay or Pinot Noir would easily fall prey to the underground pest if they were grown on their own roots. Vintners get around this problem by having nurseries graft or splice resistant stalks to the fruit-bearing portion of the plant.
What we've chosen to do here at Robert Mondavi Vineyards is to remove those vines that are affected with Phylloxera, go back in and replant these new rootstocks that are tolerant to any Phylloxera that might be in the soil.
The cost of replanting at Mondavi Vineyards alone could run to $20 million. That's why it's so critical that vintners know where and when Phylloxera will strike before replanting.
Rather than having a feeling that it's really spreading, we'll be able to say, look, it spread 30% over this past year in this direction.
The NASA partnership with Mondavi and universities at Davis and Chico is working very well. In fact, they could have used the digital images sooner.
The Mondavi team members were looking at the imagery. They said, we made a decision to rip out half this field. From looking at this imagery, we should have ripped out 3/4 of it because part of what we left is useless. And if they had gone ahead and ripped out more of the field and replanted sooner, they'd have a crop a lot sooner.
This new technology will have a long-term impact far beyond Mondavi Vineyards. The results of this 3-year NASA project will be shared with wine growers throughout the state.
We'll get this information developed and then take it out and let everyone else use it. Because no one survives in this industry alone. We all survive together.
Improved field management developed from the NASA research efforts may also improve wine quality and taste, satisfying worldwide demand. Every time a commercial airliner takes off, weather is a major concern. 1 in 13 flights is forced to change course to avoid storms. Choosing the most efficient path around bad weather is critical because fuel and overall operating costs are so high. Currently, air crews rely primarily on in-cockpit weather radar to determine which path to follow. But this radar can't see very far out ahead, and it doesn't provide any information about storm cells beyond the one in front of it. That's why aeronautics scientist Charlie Scanlon has been spending so much time in this simulator at NASA's Langley Research Center. He's heading up an effort to provide flight crews with better information to use in making reroute decisions. A touch-sensitive screen provides access to a variety of maps. This one shows any storms along the flight path and a history of their recent movements. Lightning strike data and terminal forecasts can also be called up on this same screen, all at the touch of a finger.
We have no new weather products. It's just a matter of taking what you have out there today, putting it into a data stream, and data linking it to the airplane.
The system is called Cockpit Weather Information Needs, or CWIN. To test it, Scanlon brought in 14 commercial airline pilots, including United Skeet Gifford. All flew the same scenarios with and without the CWIN displays.
And when they had the graphical weather system, they were able to make better reroute decisions than when they did not have it. In fact, they were able to fly on an average of 5% shorter distance when they had this extra tool.
5% might not sound like much, but with each of the major carriers flying close to 350 planes a day, every day at a cost of over $1,200 an hour, making better reroute decisions could save as much as $6 million a year per airline. Efficiently avoiding storms also has an added advantage for passengers.
If you can make reroute decisions and stay away from the cells 3 times as far away, it gives you smoother, safer ride.
And how do pilots feel about having NASA's weather system in the cockpit?
Can I have it yesterday? I would love it. It's one thing that I could get very enthused over, and having seen it in here, I'd like to be using it tomorrow.
NASA is also conducting other safety-related research aimed at improving aircraft inspections. Keeping their planes fit to fly is an important part of any airline's mission. In addition to daily maintenance checks at the gate, every aircraft is regularly brought in to facilities like U.S. Air's in Pittsburgh for more thorough checkouts and repairs. A very labor-intensive, costly process. Inspection Foreman Rusty Jones.
It's incredible the amount of money that's spent. We did an aging aircraft program here a few years ago, looking for some significant problems. We were spending an average of $1 million an airplane just for that one check.
Though expensive, it's still more cost-effective in today's economy to keep a plane flying than it is to replace it.
10 years ago, you bought an airplane and you threw it away after 10 years. We can no longer afford to do that.
A key concern in extending an aircraft's lifespan is its susceptibility to corrosion or failures in critical joints. Traditionally, determining the extent of these flaws has meant tearing planes apart, again costly and time-consuming. A few alternative non-destructive evaluation techniques have been developed. This ultrasonic device is widely used, but it's a time-consuming point-by-point system that ultimately relies upon operator interpretation. Looking for better ways to detect flaws, another NASA Langley research team is experimenting with this thermal bond inspection system. Its heart is an infrared camera. Small lamps are used to warm an area of the plane's surface. 3 or 4 degrees is all it takes for the camera to produce an image. Lighter areas indicate corrosion or joint problems. Group leader Elliot Kramer.
We can measure about a 3 foot by 3 foot square area at a time, and by doing that large of an area, then you can rapidly do an entire aircraft. In addition to that, it's an imaging technology, so you have a picture when you're done, and that picture can be stored and used later on subsequent inspections to see if there's been any changes in the character of that airplane.
Langley researchers are also evaluating this digital X-ray system as a means of more accurately determining just how much corrosion exists in a given area. It generates very detailed images that complement those produced with the thermal bond technology.
If you had a problem area that you found with the thermal system, you could go in with the X-ray and use that to define how bad that area is.
Research like this has the support of the airlines.
It's a definite boost to us. Any reduction that we can come up with is very, very important. We have to produce a safe, reliable, dependable airplane that people can afford to fly.
cockpit weather displays, and non-destructive evaluation techniques. NASA research helping this country's airlines compete in today's global economy. In its effort to learn more about the Earth's atmosphere, NASA has launched a variety of experiments using scientific balloons, sounding rockets, high-altitude reconnaissance aircraft, and one of the fastest planes in the sky. Scientists are now looking at a new generation of inexpensive aircraft made specifically for high-altitude studies. Called Perseus, it is shown here in a hangar at NASA's Dryden Flight Research Center in California. This remote-controlled glider has a deceptively simple design. Its thin, wispy wings and large 15-foot prop are made of strong, ultralight composite materials. The plane carries bottled oxygen to help fuel its gas-powered engine when climbing into the upper reaches of the atmosphere. It has the ability to fly twice as high as a commercial jetliner. Conceived by Aurora Flight Sciences in Manassas, Virginia, Perseus can carry 110 pounds of science payload. NASA hopes to eventually commission a fleet of inexpensive global watchers that can be launched anywhere in the world.
I think the excitement is that you're actually building a vehicle that's never been done before.
Jenny Bayer-Riedhart heads a program to expand NASA's development and use of remotely piloted vehicles.
The science community per se is a, quote, poor community. So with these vehicles, you have a little more cost-effective way of getting that type of data and information. And then if it looks like you need more information to where you need a higher payload manned vehicle capability, you can then spend that money to bring that extra source in.
According to Aurora project manager Tom Clancy, there are advantages to keeping the pilot on the ground while an onboard computer interprets commands and adjusts flight controls.
When you leave the pilot on the ground, a lot of the hardware, as well as the mass of the pilot, doesn't have to be carried up to the particular position that you're targeting.
Perseus-like aircraft may enhance important studies of Earth's protective ozone shield over the North and South poles, both very hostile environments.
It turns out to be an extremely dangerous mission for a manned vehicle because of the cold temperatures that you have below you and the inability to glide home from Antarctica in an engine-out type of situation.
Remotely controlled vehicles are under far less constraints than when a pilot is in the cockpit. This allows the team to take some calculated risks and reduce development time. Aurora's computer designer, Martin Gomez.
I made a change to the software this morning, which we're going to try to fly tomorrow morning. If this were a manned airplane, that would have paused our flight operations for weeks, if not months.
Adjustments are also being made on a tow release mechanism that will resolve handling during takeoff.
Minor changes, such as the one that's being done right now on the airplane, can be done in a matter of hours because there's nobody's life at risk.
Much of the design work that made Perseus possible grew out of a human-powered flight project at MIT called Daedalus. In 1988, this 69-pound craft flew a distance of 72 miles between the Greek islands of Crete and Santorini. The ultralight, long, flexible wings were able to keep the plane aloft at low speeds, breaking new ground in aerodynamics. Building on their success, several members of the MIT team branched out to form Aurora. In creating Perseus, they borrowed from the shape and design of the Daedalus wings. Greg Zach was one of 5 cyclist pilots on the Daedalus project. Capitalizing on his skill in flying gliders and remotely controlled model airplanes, Zach has gone on to pilot Perseus.
Okay, please remove the ground equipment and pay out the tow line.
Aurora uses an open stretch of dry desert lake bed for flight testing.
I'm in position. Okay, go ahead and accelerate and call.
Accelerating now.
When all systems are set, the truck accelerates, gently lifting Perseus into the air like a kite on a string.